There is a room where things are kept, not displayed, not used, kept. The distinction matters. Display implies an audience, something arranged for someone to encounter, positioned at a height and angle that serves viewing, lit to show what the displayer wants shown. Use implies a function, something available to be taken and applied and returned, or not returned, the object serving a purpose outside itself. Kept implies neither. To keep is to hold in place, to maintain the existence of something beyond the moment that produced it, to refuse the natural tendency of things to disperse, degrade, and disappear. The room is arranged for keeping. The shelves are not decorative, they are structural. The minimum framework required to hold objects off the floor, to separate one layer of kept things from another, to allow access without disturbance of what surrounds the accessed object. The shelves do not care what they hold what they are given. A shelf that holds a manuscript holds it with the same indifference it would bring to holding a stone, a bone, a length of cloth. The shelf performs support. It does not perform understanding. Every object in this room was brought here by a decision. Someone decided that this thing was worth keeping, not permanently. The decision to keep is never permanent, because the keeper is not permanent. And when the keeper is gone, the kept things depend on the next keeper's decision to continue keeping them. The decision to keep is renewed, implicitly, every day that the kept thing remains in its place and no one decides otherwise. Inertia is a form of decision. The archive persists because no one has yet decided it should not. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. Consider the first object in the archive. It was placed here before anything else, before the archive was an archive, before the accumulation was large enough to require a system, before the system required a room, before the room required a name. The first object was simply kept in whatever space was available by whoever decided it was worth keeping. The archive grew around it. The archive became what it is because of the accumulation of decisions that followed the first decision, each one adding to the mass of kept things until the mass required organization, and the organization required space, and the space became a room, and the room became a place with a purpose. The first object is still here. It has aged. Every object in the archive has aged. That is the nature of objects in time, which is the nature of all objects without exception. The first object has aged more than any other, has been subject to more cycles of humidity and temperature, has accumulated more of the slow chemical changes that time produces in all materials. It is not what it was when it was placed here. It is what it has become, which is the same object having passed through more time than any other object in this room. The archive's oldest object is also the archive's most changed object. The longest kept is the most transformed by keeping. Preservation and transformation are not opposites here. They are the same process at different speeds. What the archive preserves is not the object as it was. The archive preserves the object as it is becoming. The becoming is slower here than it would be outside. Slower is not stopped. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The numbering system extends beyond the last object. Every archive that uses numbers assigns them in sequence. Each new object receives the next number, the number that follows the number of the object before it. The sequence is open at one end. The last assigned number is not the last possible number. The last possible number does not exist. The sequence continues beyond the last object into the space where the next object will be placed when it arrives, if it arrives. The archive has prepared for what has not yet come. This preparation is not optimism, it is structure. The numbering system requires no belief that more objects will arrive. It requires only that the system remain open, that the next number be available, that the space for the next object exist, that the archive not declare itself complete at any point before completion is certain. Completion is never certain. The archive that declares itself complete may receive another object tomorrow. The archive that remains open may receive nothing for a century. Open and empty look the same from outside. The difference is internal. A decision about whether the sequence continues. Consider the shelf at the end of the last row. It holds the most recently kept object, which is also the object that has been here the shortest time, which is also the object that has aged the least, which is also the object closest to what it was when the decision to keep it was made. After this shelf, there are more shelves, empty shelves, shelves that hold nothing yet, that were built in anticipation of objects that may or may not come, that stand in the room performing the structure of readiness without the content of occupation. The empty shelves are not absence. The empty shelves are the archive statement about the future, that the future is expected, that space has been made for it, that when it arrives, it will find the structure already waiting. What does it mean to reach the end of the archive? Walk the length of the room, past the first object, the oldest, the most changed, past the objects that arrived after it, each one slightly less aged than the one before, each one placed at a specific time by a specific decision that is now part of the archive's history, even if that history is not recorded anywhere in the archive itself. Past the middle objects, the ones whose placement is neither remarkable for priority nor for recency, the ones that form the bulk of the kept things, the ones that the archive's purpose was most clearly designed to hold. Reach the last object. The last object has a number. The number is the highest number currently assigned in this archive. It is not the highest number possible. No number is the highest number possible. It is simply the number that follows the number of the object before it, assigned at the moment the object was brought here and logged into the system that tracks what has been brought and when and by whose decision. Past the last object, empty shelves. The empty shelves do not announce themselves as empty. They look like shelves. They have the same structure as the shelves that hold objects. The same material, the same dimensions, the same capacity to bear weight. The only difference is that no weight is currently borne. The capacity is present. The exercise of the capacity is absent. Stand at the end of the last row. Behind, everything the archive contains. Ahead, everything the archive has prepared to contain. The line between them is the last object, an object that did not know when it was placed here that it would be last. It may not remain last. Another object may arrive and be placed after it, and it will become second to last, and the archive will have extended itself by one more unit of kept things. Or nothing may arrive, and the last object will remain last, and the empty shelves will remain empty. Both are possible from this position. Neither is visible from this position. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The archive does not know what it contains. This is not a failure of the archive. The archive is not the kind of thing that knows. The archive is shelves and objects, and the numbering system that connects them, and the room that holds all of these, and the decisions that brought each object here. None of these components has knowledge. The numbering system is marks on paper or entries in a ledger, symbols that point to objects, that allow a person to find an object by consulting the system, that impose order on the accumulation, so that the accumulation does not become simply a mass of kept things with no access. The knowledge is in the system. The system is not alive. The system holds the knowledge the way a shelf holds an object. By providing the structure within which knowledge can exist, without participating in the knowledge itself, a person consulting the archive knows what the archive contains by consulting the system. Without the person, the system still exists. The system still points accurately to the objects. The objects are still in the places the system says they are. But without a consulting person, the pointing has no destination. The accuracy has no audience. The knowledge exists in a form that cannot be called knowledge, because knowledge requires a knower, and there is none. The archive in an empty room is a structure with no function being performed. The structure remains. The function waits. What waits in the archive is not the objects. Objects do not wait. Objects persist. What waits is the function, the capacity to be consulted, to yield what is sought, to allow the kept things to be found by the one who seeks them. The archive is patient in the way that only non-living things can be patient, which is to say, it is not patient at all. It simply persists, and persistence in a thing without awareness is indistinguishable from patience to those who observe it from outside. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. The archive accumulates its own history. Every object that passes through the archive, brought in, consulted, returned, kept, leaves a record. The record may be explicit, a log entry, a consultation slip, a date stamped on an access card. The record may be implicit, the slight compression of the shelf material where the object rests, the faint mark on the object's surface where hands have touched it repeatedly at the same point, the barely perceptible path worn into the floor between the entrance and the most frequently consulted objects. The archive records its own use, not intentionally. The compression of the shelf material is not a decision to record. The worn path on the floor is not a system. These are the physical consequences of repeated contact, of weight applied to the same point across many instances, of friction between foot and floor accumulated over many passages. The archive's record of its own use is written in the materials of the archive by the physics of use, without any archivist deciding to write it. The archive is also an archive of itself. What the archive contains includes, invisibly, the history of how the archive has been used, which objects were consulted most, which were rarely sought, which were brought here and never looked at again, which were worn smooth by frequent handling, and which retained the texture of their original surface because no hand had touched them since the hand that placed them here. This history cannot be read from a catalogue. This history is in the objects and the shelves and the floor. It requires touch to read, and proximity, and time spent in the room noticing what the room has recorded about itself. The archive has kept itself. No one decided this. Physics decided this in the way physics decides everything, by being the condition under which all things occur. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. At night, the archive is complete. Not finished, complete. The distinction again. Finished implies that no more will be added, that the accumulation has reached its terminus, that the sequence has closed. Complete implies that what is here is fully here, present in its entirety, nothing temporarily absent, everything in its place. At night, when the archive is closed, and the consultors have gone and the objects rest undisturbed on their shelves, the archive is complete in this sense. Everything the archive contains is here. Nothing is checked out, nothing is in transit. The archive is at this hour entirely itself. The empty shelves are also here, entirely themselves, entirely empty, entirely ready. The numbering system is here, its sequence open at the high end, its lowest number pointing to the first object and its highest number pointing to the last, with all the numbers between them pointing to all the objects between them, every pointer accurate, the whole system in a state of perfect correspondence between symbol and thing. The room is quiet, not silent. The building makes sounds, the air makes sounds. The small adjustments of materials under changing temperature make sounds too faint to identify as anything specific, but quiet in the sense that nothing is being done here. The archive's function, to allow kept things to be found, is not being performed. The function is available. It is simply not currently being called upon. The archive rests in its availability. This is what the archive does at night, and has done through every night since it was established, and will do through every night that follows, until the night when it's decided that the archive is no longer needed, or the night when the building that holds it can no longer hold it, or the night, centuries from now, or decades, or tomorrow. There is no way to know when the kept things are dispersed to other keeping, or to no keeping at all. Until that night, the archive continues. The objects persist on their shelves. The empty shelves persist in their readiness. The numbering system holds its sequence open. The last number assigned points to the last object. The next number waits for what has not yet arrived. The space after the last object is not empty in the way that space with no purpose is empty. It is empty in the way that a prepared place is empty, structured, ready, holding the form of what it expects without knowing whether what it expects will come. End without end, not the end that closes, the end that remains open. the end that is indistinguishable from continuation, that looks from outside like a pause in a sequence that may resume, that holds the last number and the empty shelf and the prepared space with the same indifference it holds everything else. The archive does not know if it is finished. The archive does not know anything. The archive simply holds what it holds and waits with the patience of structure for what may come. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. There is a room where things are kept. The first object is here, at the beginning of the first row, the most aged, the most changed, the one that has been kept the longest, and is therefore the least like what it was when keeping began. The last object is here, at the end of the last row, the least aged, the most like what it was when the decision to keep it was made. Between them, everything the archive has accumulated, in the order it arrived, numbered in sequence, resting on shelves that hold without preference. After the last object, the empty shelves. After the empty shelves, the wall that ends the room. The wall is not the end of the archive. The wall is the end of the room. The archive ends before the wall, ends at the last object, or ends at the last empty shelf prepared for an object that has not arrived, or does not end at all because the sequence remains open, and an open sequence has no end, only a current position beyond which the next position has not yet been reached. The archive is at its current position. The current position is not the final position. The final position is not known. The archive continues from its current position in the only direction available to it, forward, into the empty shelves, into the prepared space, into the open end of a sequence that was designed to extend beyond whatever it currently contains. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The room is quiet. The objects rest. The empty shelves hold their readiness. The last number waits for the next. When night falls, the archive remains, not as monument, not as conclusion, as continuation, as the structure that persists between one consultation and the next, between one kept thing and the thing that will be kept after it, between the current end and the end that has not yet arrived. The archive remains, open at one end, ready. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. When night falls, the archive remains.